Historical facts show that in the early days of the founding of the People's Republic of China, Chairman Mao Zedong emphasized the need to liberate Taiwan by force. Since then, the first-generation leadership of the party's Central Committee with Mao Zedong at the core has never promised to renounce the liberation of Taiwan by force and tied its own hands and feet. Until the high-level meeting between China and the United States in 1972, Mao Zedong still insisted on the fundamental principle that the U.S. military must withdraw from Taiwan. For the unhealthy trend of Taiwan independence instigated by the United States, Mao Zedong resolutely fought back with great courage. Mao Zedong spent a lot of effort to solve the Taiwan issue during his lifetime. His idea of solving the Taiwan issue played a role in opposing secession at the time, and later laid the foundation for our party to propose the one country, two systems plan, and wrote a glorious stroke in Chinese history. 1. There are two ways to unify the motherland, force and peace. In the early days of the founding of the People's Republic of China, Mao Zedong mainly considered liberating Taiwan by force. In 1949, a frontline headquarters with Su as the commander-in-chief was established, actively planning a military attack on Taiwan. On December 31, 1949, the Central Committee of the Communist Party of China published a message to frontline soldiers and compatriots in the whole country and proposed the tasks for 1950, including the liberation of Taiwan. After the outbreak of the Korean War on June 25, 1950, when the United States invaded the Taiwan Strait armed with the excuse of assisting in the defense of Taiwan, the Chinese government issued a statement on June 28, 1950, severely refuting Truman's statement on Taiwan's status and reprimanding the U.S. Seventh Fleet. Invasion of Taiwan. The Chinese government pointed out, this action by the United States is an armed aggression against Chinese territory and a complete breach of the UN Charter. No matter what obstructive actions the American imperialists take, the fact that Taiwan belongs to China will never be changed. Because in order to resist U.S. aggression, aid Korea, and defend the country, the strategic focus of the People's Liberation Army shifted from the southeast to the northeast, and the plan to liberate Taiwan by force was temporarily put on hold. After the Korean War ended in July 1953, the Taiwan authorities stepped up efforts to sign a mutual defense treaty with the United States. Under this influence, in 1954, a so-called trusteeship and escrow of Taiwan appeared in the international community. The Chinese government resolutely opposes this, and sternly points out that all attempts to entrust Taiwan to the United Nations or to a neutral country, as well as to neutralize Taiwan and create a so-called Taiwan independent state are all attempts to split China. The territory enslaves the people of Taiwan and legalizes the U.S. invasion of Taiwan. This is absolutely not allowed by the Chinese people. In July 1954, the Communist Party of China and the Chinese government once again proposed the task of liberating Taiwan by force, and began shelling Kinmen on September 3 of that year. Regardless of the strong opposition of the Chinese government, the U.S. government signed a mutual defense treaty with the Chiang Kai-shek clique on December 2 of that year, putting Taiwan and the Penhu Islands under the protective umbrella of the U.S. The Chinese government strongly condemned this. On December 5, Premier Zhou Enlai of the Chinese government talked about the mutual defense treaty between the United States and Chiang Kai-shek during talks with Burmese Prime Minister U Nu, saying, this treaty was actually made by the United States to invade and occupy Taiwan and the Penhu Islands. First of all, this treaty affirmed the status of the Kuomintang, saying that the Kuomintang represented China. Second, the Kuomintang formally recognized the establishment of a U.S. military base in Taiwan in the form of a treaty. The People's Republic cannot liberate Taiwan by force. Fourth, the treaty says that it can be applied to areas other than Taiwan and Penhu after consultation. Fifth, Goa said that a war between countries that do not recognize each other will not be called a war. The essence of these 5 articles is to prevent China from liberating Taiwan by force. Zhou Enlai also said, we oppose war, but we will not be intimidated. We love peace, but we do not use sovereignty to beg for peace. On December 8, Zhou Enlai issued a statement on behalf of the Chinese government, pointing out that the so-called Mutual Defense Treaty illegal, void. The Chinese people must liberate Taiwan and complete the complete reunification of their motherland. The People's Liberation Army launched a cross-sea campaign between January and February 1955, liberating Yujiangshan Island and Dachan Island. It can be seen from historical facts that in the early days of the founding of the People's Republic of China, Chairman Mao Zedong emphasized the need to liberate Taiwan by force. Since then, the first-generation leadership of the party's Central Committee with Mao Zedong at its core has never promised to renounce the liberation of Taiwan by force and tied its own hands and feet. Until the high-level meeting between China and the United States in 1972, Mao Zedong still insisted on the fundamental principle that the US military must withdraw from Taiwan. When Mao Zedong considered solving the Taiwan issue by force, he also considered that the Taiwan issue was different from the East and West Germany, North and South Korea issues. The Taiwan issue was caused by the Kuomintang occupying Taiwan after its defeat on the mainland, and the Kuomintang entrenched in Taiwan only recognized one China. The reason for the separation of the two sides of the strait is the political and military confrontation between the Kuomintang and the Communist Party. Based on this, there is another possibility to resolve the Taiwan issue, which is to resolve it peacefully within the Chinese people. At that time, Mao Zedong and the party's Central Committee carried out the work of peacefully liberating Taiwan from two aspects. One is to urge the US government to negotiate with the Chinese government. In April 1955, Zhou Enlai issued a statement at the Bandung Conference, stating that the Chinese government is willing to negotiate with the US government to ease the situation in the Far East. Zhou Enlai's statement was echoed by the United States. From August 1955 to 1970, China and the United States held 136 ambassadorial-level talks, that is, the Geneva-Warsaw negotiations, the core of which was the Taiwan issue. The second is to propose peace talks to Taiwan. The main idea of the initiative is, if the US military withdraws from Taiwan, we may use peaceful means to liberate Taiwan. If Chiang Kai-shek accepts it, Chiang Kai-shek is welcome to send representatives to Beijing for negotiations, and put forward the idea of peaceful liberation of Taiwan. At that time, Mao Zedong put forward the idea of peacefully resolving the Taiwan issue. The main content of the idea was to strive for the military and political personnel of the Kuomintang who fled to Taiwan to return to the mainland to cooperate with the Communist Party, to strive for a peaceful settlement of the Taiwan issue through negotiations with the Kuomintang. The upper echelons of the Kuomintang, including Chiang Kai-shek, can adopt a lenient policy. According to Mao Zedong's vision, Zhou Enlai pointed out on behalf of the Central Committee the work policy for Taiwan at the Democrat Symposium convened by the United Front Work Department on August 12, 1954, anyone who wishes to return to the motherland from Taiwan, we will let the past go. Everyone has friends in Taiwan, and we can do propaganda work with them. On August 15, Zhou Enlai said at a banquet for the British Labour Party delegation, those who went to Taiwan are willing to come back, and we treat them with leniency. On April 17, 1955, when Zhou Enlai met with Burmese Prime Minister U Nu in Bandung, U Nu expressed his desire to mediate the relationship between the CCP and Chiang Kai-shek. At that time, Wu Nu's interests focused on 2 points. One was how to peacefully liberate Taiwan and how to treat Chiang Kai-shek after the peaceful liberation of Taiwan. The other was whether China would be willing to sign a treaty of friendship with the United States and accept American aid after the peaceful liberation of Taiwan. Zhou Enlai replied clearly, if the United States withdraws its troops, we can liberate Taiwan peacefully. If Chiang Kai-shek accepts it, we welcome him to send representatives to Beijing for negotiations. As long as Chiang Kai-shek agrees to the peaceful liberation of Taiwan and sends representatives to Beijing for negotiations, we believe that even if Chiang Kai-shek the Chinese people can forgive him himself. But Chiang Kai-shek must recognize the Central People's Government and cannot claim to represent China. On April 23, 1955, Zhou Enlai once again stated at a meeting with the 8-nation delegation in Bandung, we are willing to talk to Chiang Kai-shek. At the same time, according to the principles established by Mao Zedong, Zhou Enlai publicly stated on behalf of the Chinese government many times when meeting with foreign guests, the liberation of Taiwan is China's internal affairs, and foreign interference will never be allowed. On April 25, 1955, when Zhou Enlai met with Malik, the former Lebanese ambassador to the United States, he pointed out that the Taiwan issue has 2 aspects, internal and external. Internally, this is our civil war. We defeated Chiang Kai-shek. He fled to Taiwan. Liberating Taiwan is an internal affair that does not allow any foreign interference. Externally, after the Korean War, the United States occupied Taiwan. When we liberated Taiwan, we would encounter the armed forces of the United States. We are not afraid of them, but think that this is a complex issue, and we can meet around the table to discuss this matter. We don't want war, we don't fear war, and when our interests are threatened, we accept the challenge and fight with all our might. On May 12, 1955, when Zhou Enlai met with Menon, India's chief representative to the United Nations, he said, China has never said that it will not negotiate with Chiang Kai-shek. There should be direct negotiations between the two parties, which is different in nature from international negotiations between China and the United States. On May 13th of the same year, Zhou Enlai made a report on the Asian African Conference at the 15th enlarged meeting of the Standing Committee of the National People's Congress, saying, "The liberation of Taiwan by the Chinese people is a matter of China's internal affairs. There are two possible ways to liberate Taiwan, namely war. The Chinese people are willing to use peaceful means to liberate Taiwan under possible conditions." On July 30th, 1955, Zhou Enlai announced this policy again at the second session of the National People's Congress. Liberation Taiwan has two ways of war and peace, and we are willing to take a peaceful way to liberate Taiwan. At the same time, he further pointed out that, if possible, the Chinese government is willing to negotiate with the local authorities in charge of the specific steps for the peaceful liberation of Taiwan, but it needs to be explained that this is a consultation between the central government and the local authorities. In 1956, China was about to enter a period of comprehensive socialist construction and needed a stable environment, as well as mobilizing all positive factors at home and abroad. Under such circumstances, Mao Zedong further considered the issue of the peaceful liberation of Taiwan. The focus of Mao Zedong's consideration this time is to unite the upper echelons of the Kuomintang in Taiwan to achieve peaceful reunification. In January 1956, he pointed out at the Supreme State Council, "The ancients have something to say, don't blame the past. As long as we are patriotic now, all people at home and abroad who can be united should unite and fight for our common goal." Regarding the Kuomintang authorities in Taiwan, Mao Zedong specifically pointed out, "Anyone who can unite and is willing to stand in our team must unite." No matter what he did in the past, such as Taiwan, there are still a lot of people there. If they are from the standpoint of patriotism, if you are willing to come, no matter whether it is individual, partial, or collective, we must welcome them and strive for our common goal. Mao Zedong also said that the Kuomintang and the Communist Party have cooperated twice. We are also preparing for the third cooperation. According to Mao Zedong's idea, Zhou Enlai, on behalf of the Central Committee of the Communist Party of China on January 30th of that year, officially announced at the second session of the second CPPCC National Committee that our party's policy towards Taiwan is, the Kuomintang is welcome to return to the mainland to visit and study. Those who are willing to take the path of peace should not blame the past. Those who have made contributions to the peaceful liberation of Taiwan will be rewarded, and Taiwanese personnel must stand under the banner of patriotism and strive for the peaceful liberation of Taiwan and the realization of the complete reunification of the motherland. On March 16, 1956, when Zhou Enlai met Li Jishan's former guard chief Ma Kan at the Zihua Hall in Zhongnanhai, he said, "If you come to Taiwan, please convey a few words to Chiang Kai-shek and your other friends. First of all, you can tell them that Chiang Kai-shek is an old friend of mine, he knows Mao Zedong, and he also knows me. We have worked with him twice. The last negotiation was in Nanjing. After that negotiation broke down, there was a 3-year civil war, which has not ended yet, but we have never closed the door to peace talks. We welcome any opportunity for peace talks. We advocate peace talks. Since we talk about peace talks, we cannot exclude anyone, as long as he is in favor of peace talks." Zhou Enlai also said that Chiang Kai-shek is still in Taiwan and the gun is in his hands, so he can keep it. The main thing is to return Taiwan to the motherland and make it an integral part of the motherland. That's a good thing. If he does this, he can gain the understanding and respect of the Chinese people, and this incident will be recorded in history as you said. On June 28, 1956, at the third meeting of the National People's Congress, Zhou Enlai further publicly expounded on our party's policy of peacefully resolving the Taiwan issue, saying that our government has repeatedly pointed out that there are two possible ways for the Chinese people to liberate Taiwan, namely, war. The Chinese people are willing to strive for the liberation of Taiwan by peaceful means under possible conditions. We are willing to discuss with the Taiwan authorities the specific steps and conditions for the peaceful liberation of Taiwan, and we hope that the Taiwan authorities will send representatives to Beijing or other appropriate places to start such negotiations with us when they deem it appropriate. In order to realize the complete reunification of the motherland as soon as possible, patriotism is not prioritized. No matter how many crimes have been committed in the past, we will follow the principle of patriotism as one family and adopt an attitude of ignoring the past. We welcome the military and political personnel of the Kuomintang to play an important role in the peaceful liberation of Taiwan. We hope that they will return to the mainland to visit relatives, visit friends, and communicate with each other. We are ready to provide all kinds of convenience and assistance. Summarizing Mao Zedong and the Party Central Committee's ideas on peacefully resolving the Taiwan issue during this period, there are 5 main contents. 1. See relatives and friends, come and go freely. 2. Forget the past, and receive awards for meritorious deeds. 4. Peaceful liberation without mutual destruction. 2. Mao Zedong's idea of peacefully resolving the Taiwan issue included the coexistence of 2 different social systems within one China. In 1956, Mao Zedong's general framework for implementing 2 social systems coexisting in one country and peacefully resolving the Taiwan issue had basically been formed. Its signs are: first, both Mao Zedong and Zhou Enlai have repeatedly expounded the 2 ways to liberate Taiwan, and emphasized that they must strive for a peaceful solution. Second, they all emphasize an unchanging principle, that is, the principle of one China and the People's Republic of China as the sole legal government of China. The Kuomintang and the Communist Party can only discuss the issue of reunification under this premise. Third, they all express such an opinion: after the peaceful reunification of the motherland, Chiang Kai-shek can be forgiven, Chiang Kai-shek can still be in Taiwan, the army can still be in his hands, and other specific issues and steps can be negotiated. Judging from the above 3 points, by 1956, Mao Zedong's idea of peacefully reunifying the motherland by implementing 2 social systems coexisting in a unified country was still in its infancy, but a large framework was already in place. Mao Zedong also considered that the Party Central Committee's policy of peacefully resolving the Taiwan issue should be specifically studied under the above-mentioned framework, and after it has been further matured, it should be finalized and unified within the party. According to Mao Zedong's idea, on July 29, 1956, the Central Committee of the Communist Party of China issued the instructions on strengthening the peaceful liberation of Taiwan, which pointed out that the current work on the peaceful liberation of Taiwan must be changed in order to adapt to the current new situation and policies. External propaganda should adopt the policy of emphasizing similarities and not emphasizing differences, emphasizing patriotic family. In order to further strengthen the work of peacefully liberating Taiwan, the central government appointed heads of departments such as United Front Work, Investigation, Propaganda, Public Security, Foreign Affairs, Overseas Chinese Committee, General Political Affairs, and Military Intelligence to set up a working group on Taiwan to assist the central government in unified control of Taiwan work. Soon, the 8th National Congress of the Communist Party of China was held. This line of thought and framework was affirmed by the 8th National Congress of the Communist Party of China. The documents of the 8th National Congress of the Communist Party of China pointed out, "We are willing to use peaceful negotiations to bring Taiwan back to the embrace of the motherland, and avoid the use of force. If force is used as a last resort, it will be after the peace talks have lost the possibility or failed. No matter what method is adopted, therefore, the just cause of liberating Taiwan will surely win the final victory." Mao Zedong and the Party Central Committee's policy of striving to peacefully liberate Taiwan in a flexible manner was supported by patriots, many of whom offered to mediate between the Kuomintang and the Communist Party to promote the process of peaceful reunification. Here, when Mao Zedong met with these friends, based on the original idea, he further proposed a specific plan on how to peacefully resolve the Taiwan issue. The content was, Taiwan must return to the embrace of the motherland in order to realize the reunification of the motherland. If Taiwan returns to the motherland, everything can be business as usual. Taiwan can implement the 3 principles of the people and trade with the mainland, but don't send spies to sabotage them, and we don't send red spies to sabotage them. After the negotiation, we can make an agreement and announce it. Taiwan can send people to the mainland to have a look, and if it is not easy to come publicly, they can come secretly. Mao Zedong also said that as long as Taiwan cuts off relations with the United States, it can send representatives back to participate in the National People's Congress and the National Committee of the Chinese People's Political Consultative Conference. Regarding the specific plan proposed by Mao Zedong, Zhou Enlai also made a further explanation. He said, "It is natural for Chiang Ching-kuo and others to be arranged in the National People's Congress or the CPPCC. Chiang Kai-shek will always make arrangements at the central government in the future. Taiwan is still under their control. If Chen Cheng is willing to do it, Zhang Jingguo has no choice but to let him be the deputy." In fact, both Chen Cheng and Zhang Jingguo wanted to do something. Chen Cheng was willing to work in the central government. Zhang Jingguo could also work in the central government if he was not under Fu Ziuyi. If there are difficulties in Taiwan right now, we can wait and hope that the Zhangs and Chen Cheng will also show sincerity. These specific plans for peacefully resolving the Taiwan issue proposed by Mao Zedong and the party's Central Committee at that time made the contents of the conceptual framework for the coexistence of two social systems in a unified People's Republic of China more complete and substantial, and the language of expression also became more comprehensive. It is more clear and specific. This is, China must be unified, and Taiwan must return to the embrace of the motherland. After Taiwan's return to the motherland, everything can go on as usual and Taiwan can practice the three peoples principles. It can be seen that although Mao Zedong's idea of peacefully resolving the Taiwan issue did not use the term one country, two systems, its basic content was one country, two systems. Mao Zedong made every effort to realize the concept of resolving the Taiwan issue. Mao Zedong's conception of peacefully resolving the Taiwan issue was not smooth sailing in practice, but Mao Zedong persisted in this conception and brought it closer to reality in the storm of struggle. To practice the concept put forward by Mao Zedong, first of all, it is a matter of adhering to the One China principle. On this issue, Mao Zedong encountered a challenge. This challenge comes from the United States. Successive U.S. administrations have pursued a policy of dividing China. After Chiang Kai-shek escaped from Taiwan, the important purpose of the United States supporting Chiang Kai-shek was to make Taiwan a major link in preventing communism in Asia, and to build Taiwan into an unsinkable aircraft carrier for the United States in the Pacific Ocean. Mao Zedong's idea of peacefully resolving the Taiwan issue and then realizing the reunification of Taiwan with the mainland of the motherland is a serious threat to the United States' implementation of its own strategic plans. Moreover, Mao Zedong's policy of peacefully resolving the Taiwan issue had a certain influence on the Taiwan authorities, which also made the United States worry that the Kuomintang group would break away from its own control and weaken its power in the Asia-Pacific region. Therefore, Mao Zedong's vision of a peaceful solution to the Taiwan question aroused unease in the United States. In order not to make Mao Zedong's vision a reality, the United States stepped up its two China's policy during this period. With the acquiescence and support of the U.S. government, a political force advocating Taiwan independence emerged in the United States. There have also been arguments in the international arena, such as Taiwan's status has not been determined, Taiwan residents are not Han Chinese, and the implementation of a referendum to realize Taiwan's autonomy and other arguments. Mao Zedong fought back resolutely with great courage to the unhealthy trend of Taiwan independence newly instigated by the United States. When the United States was agitating for Taiwan independence, Premier Zhou Enlai of the Chinese government delivered a speech on behalf of the Chinese government on February 10, 1958, severely refuting the fallacies of Taiwan's undecided status and Taiwan's autonomy. Taking into account the international situation at that time and the situation in the Taiwan Strait, Mao Zedong, with the courage of a great revolutionary, resolutely decided to bombard Jinmen when the United States threatened to use nuclear weapons. The shelling of Quemoy not only hid the aggressive arrogance of the United States, but more importantly kept the Taiwan issue within the scope of a country's internal issues. As Mao Zedong said in the message to compatriots in Taiwan and order of the Ministry of National Defense of the People's Republic of China written by Mao Zedong during the bombardment of Kinmen, we are all Chinese, and 36 strategies are the best strategy. Now, draw your attention. Taiwan, Penhu, Kinmen, and Matsu are Chinese territories, and indeed they are not American territories. Taiwan, Penhu, Kinmen, and Matsui are part of China, not another country. There is only one China in the world, and there are no two China. We suggested holding negotiations and carrying out a peaceful settlement. The shelling of Kinmen was to help Chiang Kai-shek defend the Kinmen, and the shelling was to help them hold on. This is to deal with the Americans. Make a clear distinction between China and the United States. At the same time, Mao Zedong and Zhou Enlai were selectively seeking channels for dialogue with the Chiang Kai-shek clique. On December 14, 1959, when Zhou Enlai met Du Yuming, Wang Yaoe, Zheng Qiuqing, Zhen Tingji, Song Zilian, and others, he proposed, "You should use your influence to do work in Taiwan." Afterwards, Du Yuming and others sent letters to military and political officials of the Taiwan Kuomintang through various channels, explaining the mainland's policy towards Taiwan, hoping to achieve the reunification of the motherland through peaceful negotiations. These actions have had an important impact on Taiwan's adherence to the One China principle. At the beginning of 1960, the United States began to implement a two-way policy toward China. On the one hand, it continued to force Taiwan to break away from the mainland politically and economically, and provided military assistance to Taiwan on the premise that it would open the gap and implement the two China's policy. On the other hand, try to increase contact with mainland China and find a new compromise with the Chinese government. Mao Zedong keenly saw that the situation has deepened the contradictions between the United States and Chiang Kai-shek, which will help us further carry out the work of peacefully liberating Taiwan. On May 22, 1960, Mao Zedong presided over a meeting of the Standing Committee of the Political Bureau of the CPC Central Committee to study the issue of work with Taiwan. Based on the new situation, this meeting determined the general policy for resolving the Taiwan issue. Taiwan would rather be placed in the hands of Chiang and his sons than in the hands of the Americans. We can wait for Chiang Kai-shek. The task of liberating Taiwan does not necessarily have to be completed by our generation, but can be left to the next generation. It is also difficult for Chiang Kai-shek and others to come here now. The problem is to have this idea and gradually create conditions. Once the time is right, it will be easy to handle. In order to implement this general policy, the Central Committee of the Communist Party of China also put forward 4 new specific opinions on a more relaxed policy toward Taiwan. 1. After Taiwan's return to the motherland, all military and political power and personnel arrangements were entrusted to Chiang Kai-shek except that diplomacy must be unified in the central government. 2. All insufficient funds for military administration and construction in Taiwan shall be allocated by the central government. 3. Taiwan's social reform can be delayed until the conditions are ripe and Chiang Kai-shek's consent is obtained. 4. Mutual agreement not to send spies, not to do things that undermine the unity of the other party. It is very obvious that the general policy and 4 specific opinions on the Taiwan work put forward by Mao Zedong and the party's Central Committee at that time were a further development of Mao Zedong's idea of peacefully resolving the Taiwan issue put forward in 1956. The 4 specific suggestions made Mao Zedong's policy of peacefully resolving the Taiwan issue broader and more specific. It can be said that the content of the policy of implementing the coexistence of 2 social systems in a unified country formed by our party to solve the Taiwan issue at that time was relatively complete, and the question of how to express it in the future is relatively complete. Another important problem in practicing the peaceful reunification of the motherland by implementing the coexistence of 2 different social systems in one country is how to solve the problem of the coexistence of the 2 social systems in a unified country. In order to solve this problem, Mao Zedong insisted on 2 policies. 1 is to insist that this problem is an internal matter of the Chinese people and should be handled by the people on both sides of the Taiwan Strait, and foreign countries are not allowed to intervene. The other is to insist on the policy of leniency. As long as one China is adhered to, Taiwan can enjoy a high degree of autonomy after returning to the motherland. In order to implement these 2 policies, after Mao Zedong and the party's Central Committee put forward the general policy and 4 specific opinions on Taiwan work on May 22, 1960, they made new supplements to the 4 specific opinions in early 1963. The supplementary content is, Taiwan can exercise greater autonomy after returning to the motherland. Except for diplomacy, the military and personnel affairs are all handled by Taiwan's Chiang Kai-shek and Chen Chang. Taiwan's social reform can not only be slowed down, but also when the conditions are ripe, the opinions of Chiang Kai-shek and Chen Chang must be respected, negotiated, and decided, and then carried out. At the beginning of 1963, Mao Zedong further enriched the content of the specific opinions on the peaceful reunification of the motherland in which 2 different social systems coexist in one country, and through Zhou Enlai, he asked Zhang Zhaizhong and Fu Ziyi to write to Chen Chang to convey them, and made more specific opinions again. Instruction of. When Zhou Enlai asked Zhang and Fu to write letters, he also summarized Mao Zedong's specific opinions into 1 outline and 4 objectives. The 1 outline is, as long as Taiwan returns to the motherland, all other issues should be handled properly with respect to the opinions of Chiang Kai-shek and Chen Chang. 4 I's are, 1. After Taiwan returned to the motherland, all military and political powers and personnel arrangements were handled by Chiang Kai-shek and Chen Chang, except that diplomacy must be unified in the central government. 2. All the shortfalls in Taiwan's military, political and construction expenses will be allocated by the central government. 3. Taiwan's social reform can be delayed until the conditions are ripe and the opinions of the president and brother, referring to Chen, are respected and then negotiated and decided. 4. The 2 sides agreed not to send anyone to destroy the unity of the other side. At the same time, it also stated to the Taiwan side, these opinions belong to the central government. Soon, Zhou Enlai asked relevant people to tell Chen Chang, after Taiwan returns to the motherland, it can exercise greater autonomy. Apart from diplomacy, the military and personnel affairs can be managed by Taiwan friends themselves. He also said, although the letters sent in the past were personally written by some friends, the government supported them. Our personal responsibilities in the government can be changed, but the above-mentioned policy on Taiwan work will not change. It can be seen from the above that Mao Zedong's one outline and four objectives for the peaceful reunification of the motherland proposed by Mao Zedong in early 1963 and summarized by Zhou Enlai was essentially a plan for the coexistence of two social systems in a unified country. One keynote means adhering to the principle of one China, four eyes means implementing two systems in one country. One outline and four objectives is actually a more specific plan for the peaceful reunification of the motherland proposed by Mao Zedong in 1956 by implementing two different social systems in one country. It should be pointed out that Mao Zedong proposed in the mid-1950s and further enriched the content in the early 1960s to plan the idea of implementing two different social systems in one country. The basic content of the proposed one country, two systems concept. 4. The influence of Mao Zedong's idea of peacefully resolving the Taiwan issue on the Kuomintang authorities. It is worth emphasizing that Mao Zedong's idea of peacefully reunifying the motherland by implementing two different social systems coexisting in one country had a major impact on the Kuomintang and played a historical role in maintaining the reunification of the motherland. It should be affirmed that Zhang and his son adhered to the one China position, but in the early 1950s, they were eager to use American power to protect themselves and counterattack the mainland, and they were not vigilant enough to the US's plan to split China. In the early 1950s, the Chinese government's exposure of U.S. imperialist aggression and conspiracy to split China and its emphasis on China's unification and never allowing split had a certain influence on Chiang and his son. Since then, Zhang and his son have become vigilant against the American plot to split China, and they do not buy the American account on many issues. On September 9, 1954, Dulles went to Taiwan to hold talks with Chiang Kai-shek, and proposed to entrust Taiwan to the United Nations or to a neutral country for management. He also proposed neutralizing Taiwan or establishing an independent state of Taiwan. Chiang Kai-shek's refusal. After the United States and Chiang Kai-shek signed the Mutual Defense Treaty on December 3, 1954, the United States attempted to gain command over Taiwan's military. In this regard, Chiang Kai-shek resolutely resisted and would never hand over the army to the command of the Americans. With regard to the establishment of the Taiwan U.S. Military Coordination Conference, Chiang Kai-shek has always insisted that the Kuomintang side should host and lead the meeting, and the Americans should not be allowed to hold the right to host and lead. Regarding the Taiwan independence forces in Japan, the Chiang father and son took measures of not supporting and dividing. As a result of the division, in 1956, Liao Wenai, the leader of Japan's Taiwan independence, announced the dissolution of the Taiwan Independence Organization in Japan. On March 17, 1958, according to Chiang Kai-shek's opinion, the U.S. military agencies stationed in Taiwan were reorganized and merged to form the U.S. Military Assistance Command in Taiwan. In fact, this headquarters is also controlled by the Kuomintang, and the U.S. military commander is only in the position of assistant. On May 25 of the same year, Chiang Kai-shek directly told American reporters, "We are counterattacking the mainland, there is no need for the United States to directly participate in the war. No obligation to accept Dulles talk." In July 1956, Mao Zedong and the party's Central Committee put forward the instructions and specific opinions on peacefully resolving the Taiwan issue, and in 1960 they put forward the general policy and four specific opinions on Taiwan work, which also had an important impact on Taiwan. At that time, the Taiwan authorities still said verbally that they would counterattack the mainland and recover the mainland, but on the other hand, they also intensified their crackdown on Taiwan independence elements and their activities in Taiwan and overseas. On September 4, 1960, the Taiwan authorities arrested a group of Taiwan independence elements and people with Taiwan independence tendencies, banned their organizations and activities, and never let the Taiwan independence forces become popular. On April 28, 1961, the Kuomintang also specially organized commemorative activities for the 300th anniversary of Zheng Qinggong's recovery of Taiwan, which showed that they also adhered to the position of one China and safeguarding the unity of the motherland. In the second half of 1961, the United States engaged in a conspiracy against Taiwan to pull Chen, and restrain Chiang Kai-shek. The relationship between father and son expands the contradictions between them and achieves their goal of two Chinas or one China, one Taiwan. Mao Zedong saw through the conspiracy of the United States and decided to break the conspiracy of the United States to pull Chen and suppress Chiang by promoting the unity of Jiang's father and son with Chen. He came forward through Zhou Enlai and said, "We hope that Chiang Kai-shek, Chen Chen, and Chiang Ching-kuo will unite against U.S. imperialism." Before Chen Chen went to the United States, Zhou Enlai also reminded the Taiwan authorities to strengthen internal unity and hold the army in their hands, so that the United States would not dare to act rashly. Zhou Enlai conveyed that Mao Zedong has repeatedly stated that as long as Chiang Kai-shek defends Taiwan and does not separate it from China, then we will not change the current relationship with them and hope that they will not cross this line. Zhou Enlai also said, Chen Chen still has some national integrity. It seems that he will not be led by the nose by the United States. The trap. In August 1961, when Chen Chen visited the United States, the U.S. State Department showed Chen Chen the records of Sino-US ambassadorial negotiations since 1955, hoping to win over Chen Chen. But after Chen Chen read it, he said with emotion, "The CCP rejects all the proposals of the United States, but insists on the withdrawal of the U.S. fleet and armed forces from Taiwan. It is not treacherous and does not seek quick gains. It is the demeanor of a great country." Chen Chen made it clear. He said that he also wanted to stand on the side of safeguarding the unity of the motherland and supporting the Chinese Communist Party's stand on one China and non-splitism. Chen Chen also said, the Kuomintang also needs to explain to history. At the same time, the Taiwan authorities originally had deep internal conflicts, but instead strengthened their unity on the issue of maintaining one China. On August 14, 1961, after Chen Chen returned to Taiwan, he dedicated Mao Zedong and the party's Central Committee further proposed in 1963 and summarized by Zhou Enlai the one outline and four objectives specific plan for the peaceful reunification of the motherland, which also had a certain influence on the Taiwan authorities. On January 12, 1963, when Chiang Kai-shek delivered a speech at the 9th National Congress of the Kuomintang, he insisted on the one China position. At the same time, severe measures have been taken to combat the Taiwan independence forces. In September 1964, Pen Mingman, director of the political department of National Taiwan University, and others secretly drafted the Taiwan Declaration of Independence, but was arrested by the Kuomintang government after being discovered. Since then, whenever Chiang and his son discovered activities of Taiwan independence elements, they arrested them mercilessly. On October 22, 1966, Song Mailing delivered a speech in San Francisco, USA, severely denouncing the fallacy of two Chinas, which played a role in dividing and attacking the Taiwan independence forces in the United States. On June 10, 1968, when Chiang Kai-shek received a visiting delegation of Japanese news editors, he reiterated his firm opposition to the two Chinas policy, which once again attacked and divided overseas Taiwan independence forces. On January 3, 1970, the United States helped the leader of the Taiwan independence Pen Mingman escape from Taiwan and went to the United States for activities. Shortly thereafter, on January 15, with the acquiescence of the United States, Taiwan independence groups in the United States, Canada, Japan, and other places founded the Taiwan Independence League, headquartered in New York. Chiang Kai-shek made a statement on January 13, 2 days before the incident, warning in advance, strongly condemning it, and stating that the Taiwan government's one China position will never change. What is even more intriguing is that after Chen Chen died of illness on March 5, 1965, in his last words, he neither mentioned counterattacking the mainland nor anti-communism. Against the trend, cannot use Taiwan's military power for foreign countries, cannot trust the United States, cannot be fooled by Japan. In fact, in his last words, Chen Chen expressed his attitude towards reconciliation with the Communist Party in order to realize the unification of China. At that time, some people in the Kuomintang suggested that before publishing Chen Chen's last words, the content of counteroffensive and anti-communist should be added. Chen Chen's relatives disagreed, so they approached Chiang Kai-shek, and Chiang Kai-shek said, "If you agree, you cannot modify it." This incident shows that Chiang Kai-shek had considerations in resolving the issue of the reunification of the motherland through peaceful negotiations between the two sides of the Taiwan Strait. Historical facts have proved that maintaining the unity of the motherland and opposing secession is the common aspiration of the people on both sides of the Taiwan Strait. Mao Zedong's idea of resolving the Taiwan issue reflected the common will of the people on both sides of the Taiwan Strait, conformed to the historical trend, and wrote a glorious stroke in Chinese history. Today, whoever wants to go against the will of the people and resist the trend of history to split the motherland will not only end badly, but will be nailed to the pillar of shame in history.